And I put on the PDF the biographies of our wonderful presenters, Kimberly and Tammy, today, so you can read that there. I won't read that now, but Kimberly is going to give us some repertoire suggestions. Thank you so much, and I will spotlight you. And Kimberly, take it away. Is she spotlighted, everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you so much, Mary, for organizing this and continuing this conversation among teachers. And I really do appreciate the invitation to speak again. When I started thinking about, school getting started, and the students here are starting this Wednesday, August the 9th, which seems really early, but I'm finding that I'm having to jumpstart my brain on how am I going to get started with these students again, including new students, and of course my continuing students. I teach at all different levels, so that's always fun to try to pull together, because I do teach, my philosophy is more teaching to the individual as opposed to teaching to a specific curriculum. I have a lot of different resources and a lot of different materials that I use to pull together. And I think just having taught for over 30 years, you do get a knowledge base of what is out there for that, for those new students for the beginning of the school year. And of course, there is constantly new material coming out, which is hard to keep up with. And I tend to find, my little niches, and sometimes I'll move from one to another. But if I find something that's working well, I certainly won't try to reinvent the wheel every single time. In preparing autumn and getting started with school year repertoire, I began to realize, even before doing some searches on stuff, that I could probably fill up the whole hour and 15 minutes just on this topic. So what I've decided to do is just kind of give you a few examples of repertoire that I use that some of you may already be using, and possibly some repertoire you're not familiar with, and just give you a little bit of what I'm doing, and take or leave whatever works for you and for your students. So first of all, getting our students back into their practice routine is really important. And I've put a link on the chat for meredithstrings.com. And she has one category where if you go to, it's free practice charts that you can print out. So for my younger students especially, this is a free printout. And I use this, to get them going with some of their practicing, whether it's like, let's see if you can circle all the pumpkins. You've practiced your Halloween song. Every time you practice it, circle a pumpkin. And by Halloween, let's see if we've got the whole page circled. Or, you can come up with your own methods of using this. She's got wildflowers. She has Christmas icons. She has pages that you can use throughout the year. So I wanted to share that resource with you because we like free stuff. And and this is a way to get some of the students motivated by giving them a goal and having them do something that's fun. So that's my first thing. For my beginning students, a lot of times I will use this book as a supplement to whatever else I'm using with them, of rhymes and seasons. And I do have a PDF listed on the chat that says fall repertoire. And these are the items that I'm going to be talking through, so that you don't have to feel like you have to write down every book. You can download that or print that out as a reference. So one of the nice things I like about this is it is a beginning book, and it even goes with note naming and playing one finger at a time for those beginning students that we're trying to get started. Now, it fits into this topic because I love how she goes into pieces that are the seasons. It sort of follows the, I think, sort of the school year by getting the students started with some basics and then going into a fall and winter exercise for technique, but calling it a piece. And then moving into back to school and October. I find that my students, if they have titles that they can resonate with, that sometimes I can get my technique across like this better than simply an exercise book. And I'm not saying don't use exercise books, because I use exercise books all the time. But this one has even short little Halloween songs that really work with having to place and learning fingering. I teach at a school where sometimes their students are trying to learn their orchestra music. So we actually, in our half-hour lessons, we don't have a lot of time to spend on solo repertoire, but these little 2-line pieces are fun for them to do and still gives them something to play without having just a part in the orchestra. It goes through Christmas and spring. It has some holiday songs, Winter's Delight, and then goes into Valentine's, springtime, Bluebird's Nest. So I just find that this works really well for young students and getting them started. Again, it's usually, I use it as a supplemental piece or book, and not just solely, but it's one that I tend to go to a lot. A couple other pieces that I have listed, the Autumn Leaves by Regine Laux is also a really nice piece. I just got back in town, so I couldn't pull all my books out of my files for this, but I would suggest everybody take a look at that. And then Walk in the Woods. And, this was one that I just pulled partly because of the cover. It has that autumn feel, and this is a nice one for students who work well a little bit outside of just a strictly classical repertoire. And again, we've got pieces that have titles like In the Treetop, and the level of this is sort of a beginning, early intermediate feel. And this is sometimes something that I will work with in addition to something that's in the classical repertoire. So I'm going to just play a little bit of In the Treetop so you can get an idea. Some of these pieces are a little harder than others. They're not just at one straight level. So this is In the Treetop.
Hey, Kimberly, I think you need to put your original sound for musicians on.
Yep. To me, it has that sort of fall feel to it. And this might be a book. Catherine Cater has so many wonderful books that I use about horses, about birds, about, all dogs and cats. And I do find that the students receive those really well. Moving on with some of the repertoire. Autumn Mood by Frank Volz. That's a really nice one I like to use with adults. And again, for them to key into some of that those seasonal titles and materials is kind of a fun thing for them to do before getting straight into holiday stuff. Can you hear me speaking better now? Yeah, okay. So yeah, the autumn move for adult students, I think, works really, really nicely. And they like to have that sense of change of seasons too, and enjoy things a little bit before we're all thrown into holiday music. The Hasselmans, this one is going to be for more of an advanced student. Let me give you an idea of the level of this. But this is a really wonderful grouping of 3 pieces. And I'll play just a little bit of this first one. I think that has a really nice melody to it. It gives because again of the title, it's seasonal, it feels seasonal, and it's got some real interest to it. Hasselman's, it's major repertoire. So this is one that I like to use with more of my high school students. Okay. Now, I listed a couple of Salzedo groupings, the Suite of 8 dances and the 5 preludes for harp alone. Although these don't necessarily have a seasonal spirit to them, I think with my own teaching, if students at the beginning of the fall have a grouping of pieces that they are working on to complete, that's almost like the start of a project for the school year. I find that that's something that they enjoy doing as they work through a group. So Suite of 8 dances and the 5 preludes are both for pedal harp. I would use those more for my high school students. But to begin something like that, whether it's one of these series or something else, I just find that it helps to give them some goals, like we're going to work through this grouping, and it gives something that's really a little more cohesive, as instead of just pulling this piece and this piece and this piece out into their repertoire. When they finish one, they're going to go to the next piece and the next piece. So I like to think about that as well when I'm starting off with school year. Now, the Bernard's on Christmas piece that I have next, and this is, I don't think I put this on the PDF, but this is by Megan Matheny. And the reason, even though I'm talking about autumn and Halloween, some Halloween repertoire, I wanted to include this one because what she's done, and I listed this in the PDF, is she's combined some of Bernard Andreas's music with Christmas carols. So if I start for something a little different, if I start some of my students out on the Andreas pieces in this grouping, then as soon as we get done with Halloween, then we can move into this book and work with some of the holiday songs. So it's a repertoire building piece. Because I love working with his music as far as technique. And instead of just having that in and of itself, the way she has combined them with the Christmas carols allows you to add that on then later. So they've got something that they've already learned, but now it's being incorporated in an arrangement for a holiday piece that they can learn. So let me just play a little bit of one of these. Which one is it? Okay, so this is the Ribambelle #1 with the first Noel. And let me just do this too. So in his book, this is #1. It's a 1-pager. It can be played on pedal harp or on the lever harp. And I'm going to play it first, and then I'm going to I'll play it within her arrangement so that you can see a little bit about what she's done. Her book has a really nice variety as far as levels. It is one that you can have a younger student or a less advanced student start on, like the piece I'm going to do, the first Noel, but it's got some that are also pretty tricky. So it kind of grows with the student. And now this is going to be it in the arrangement. So I played that a little bit on the fast side, but that gives you an idea of how you can incorporate, I think, starting some of these Andreas pieces earlier on, and then having them build it into some refreshing Christmas arrangements. So I like to do that. All right, I think I'm doing okay on time, because here comes my favorite part that I want to share with you today. With the Halloween and holiday music, of course, I already talked about the Andreas and Megan Matheny's music. With Halloween, I find that there are more and more arrangements and books, original compositions that we now have for the harp, because we don't often think about the harp being spooky. And I think we've gotten more and more creative arrangers and composers that are contributing to this type of category. One of my all-time favorite books for students is Harpy Halloween, where Julie Keys has a whole bunch of different little things here that you weave in between the strings. She goes through all kinds of sound effects. This is another book where I find I can use this one several years with a student, even if they get a little more advanced. They can start off quite simply and then get much more complicated. And this is incorporating a lot of sound effects. So the students have fun with these. There are 13 pieces in here. They are easier on pedal harp. There are a couple that you can do on the lever harp, but that is a real go-to for me with my students. My favorite tip, though, is allowing the students to have this time of autumn or Halloween to be creative themselves. I find it an opportunity to teach some of the extended effects. I know Melody Music carries the Master Glossary of symbols and special effects for the harp. This is a nice thing for your students to have in their library. And even if you're working with just a handful of effects with the student, I asked them to create their own Halloween song. Now, I know not all of the families that I work with celebrate Halloween. So if I'm not certain about a family or a student and their preference with that, I usually, if it's a new student, I usually ask them, oh, does your family celebrate Halloween? Or we're gonna make up a Halloween or autumn song. Which one sounds more fun to you? If you want to do an autumn song, they can be blowing leaves and all kinds of neat sound effects with that. Or if you want to do something, make up a Halloween song, then I usually ask them to write a little story or draw a picture or a poem or something that goes along with their piece. Not all of them will do that, but a lot of them will. And it gives them just that chance to have fun. And for me to teach some of the extended effects, they have a blast with this. We record it, so that they've got that. Some of my more advanced students, if they've got something they really like, we'll work on notating what they've come up with, which is a whole other piece of teaching an aspect of music, is how do you transfer what you're hearing, what you're playing, what does that look like? How do you figure out those rhythms? And how do you figure out, the notes and the time signature and all of that? For the ones, usually to not overwhelm a student, I'll start off by, let's decide what a title it would be, or what subject you want. Do you want to do one about a haunted house? Or do you want to do one about picking apples? And we start off with an idea, And then they go back home, and I've already shown them some different techniques. They've listed them in their notebook, and they start to develop either their story or their picture. And the next lesson, we get to where we really start trying some things out. Most of them come back with some fun ideas. And I do give them examples of the effects, you know, from everything from like the fingernail glissandos to some of the base. I'll show you some of the basic ones I do. Even taking your nails and on the wire strings, getting that creaking sound, back of the nails. We all know the prelude-tabla. The whooshing effect, or the gong. So I demonstrate all these different ones, even tapping, like, oh, you knock on the haunted door and you hear something running away. So it's really fun for them to get creative like that. I have on the chat also given you a link and a PDF file of Bernard Andreas's effects that he uses. So you've got two sources here besides your regular, you know, Salzedo method book. You've got a couple other sources that can either help guide you or add to their library. The Bernard Andreas link is a free guide, notation guide. And so I just turned that into a PDF, but that's available online for free as well. So those are just some of the ideas that I have with getting the students to be creative and expressing themselves a little bit. Last year I had a girl, she wanted to make a piece up about spiders. And so she had actually come up with paper and scissors. She came up with bracelets with paper spiders on them. So she played her spider piece for me with her spider bracelets on. So it's a great way to teach that's off the page. And I encourage all of you to do that. I know I'm out of time, but if anybody's got any questions, I guess you can put them in the chat, or if we have a couple minutes left, I could maybe answer one or two questions. I hope this has given you some new ideas. Thank you.
We have time for a couple questions. If anyone wants to holler out a question to Kimberly, go ahead.
I answered everything.
I guess you gave such a great explanation. There are no questions. No, did you see anybody raise a hand? I did not.
I did not, but I'm not in complete gallery view. You can always unmute yourself.
Kimberly, did you ever study Crown of Ariadne with Judy Lohman?
Oh, I did not. I did not. One of my friends at the time was learning that piece with her, and it's pretty amazing.
Lots of. I remember I heard it, I think at her premiere of that piece, yeah.
Yeah, that takes extended techniques to a whole other level.
Well, they're fun.
Okay, Annette.
Yeah, first, thank you for your presentation. Very, very nice and interesting. Gave me some new ideas. I came late, or I was thrown out and had to go log back in. So the chat, so anybody else who came late that won't have the chat, Mary or whoever could maybe send an email again later to all participants with all your information and whatever other information.
I will. I always do a follow-up, so I will do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll be up till 1 in the morning doing that. No, just kidding. I'll do a follow-up.
It doesn't have to be immediately, just generally before fall.
I'll try to repost them in the chat as we're continuing our discussion today as well. So I can't see everybody's hands, but if there's anybody else, just take yourself off mute. Otherwise, thank you so much for letting me share some of what I do with all of you.
Yay.
Okay, thank you so much, Kimberly. Thank you, thank you. It's great information. I'd forgotten about Catherine Cater's book. Completely forgot about that book. So we are going to move on now to Tammy Kazmierczak. Am I saying that right, Kazmierczak?
Got it. You got it. Good
Okay. Well, I'm Polish, so I should know, right?
job. It's like Kazmierczak has your back. Tammy has your back. Kazmierczak.
I'm trying to put the spotlight on you.
All
There
right,
we
can you hear me all right? Can you hear this? Can you hear the harp okay? Yes? Okay, great. Thank you guys for including me in the conversation today. I'm so happy to be a part of this wonderful music educator circle in the harp world, and happy summer. It's hot here. I'm sure everybody else is sweating bullets. It's really hot under these lights. But if you can see, I play pedal harp. I also teach lever harp. I play at the bedside and lap harp. I've been playing for 35 years. I teach a wide swath of ages and abilities. And, you know, my passion really is about creativity. I love it. I love talking about it, probably just as much as I like to talk about harp therapy. So some of my ideas, I hope, spark you and spark you to be a better teacher, or if you're a student. I was just kind of wondering how many students we had in the gallery, but I think I'm hopefully talking to mostly teachers today. But I hope this engages you with your students and promotes musicianship in like the best ways possible. So some of this material you probably have on hand. I have so much in front of me right now. Honestly, my collection in front of me is worth a series of workshops. So I'm trying to collect my information and rebrand my website and get it on there so I can put, you know, decades of teaching tips and tricks, as well as content about like canned presentations and program material that's really helpful for us teachers who want to find a theme quickly and kind of get ideas. I just think it's so wonderful when we can share information and not feel really competitive, but more about the community of harp playing and teaching. And, you know, I also perform quite a bit. So I've had hundreds of programs and material, and I keep thinking I'm going to write this stuff down and help, you know, get organized. So if you're like me, you need a little help. So the point of today's conversation, though, is really about helping teachers think about teaching, utilizing creative teaching concepts while focusing on the intermediate level. So hopefully you're going to find it some fun. You're going to find it fun to teach and find joy in the process. So without going too far, I want you to pull out your phones and feel free to take pictures of whatever I put up on the screen, because we're going to be going through a lot of material in a short amount of time. So I don't know if Mary has my PDF on file, but I sent it to her before. If somebody could throw that up on the chat bar. I'm having a hard time getting up there. But one of my goals is to help teachers think really about teaching burnout, and keeping your energy level up and making it inspiring is not only for the student, it's for the teacher. You know, it's infectious. If you're an enthusiastic teacher, chances are you're going to pump that energy into a student. But you have to know your limitations as a teacher. And it's not always about the student improving. It's sometimes about us reassessing as teachers and finding improvement in the way we can develop. So it's really exciting to have a different plan for every student. My filing system is radically different now as I've taught longer than when I first started. I really keep like tabs on a student like a medical record, and I really think about what they say, what they're interested in. So I want you to grab a piece of paper if you're not already taking notes. And if you don't have the PDF, it's about the acronym creativity. So write on, you know, a big column, CREATIVITY. It's 10 letters. Okay, so the first C, this is going to help me with my talking points, stay organized. It's about cultivating a creative mindset for both the teacher and the student, connecting harp lessons to other harp forms or other art forms like painting or dance or poetry. This is really important when you're starting a new student. You know, get to know who they are. But I think first we have to know who we are as a teacher. Like, am I flexible? Am I organized? Am I crafty? Am I technologically savvy? Am I willing to learn and adapt to the new changes that are happening? And things are happening very fast in the harp world. Are you willing to play and teach on lever pedal a sideways harp now? Do you want to learn a loop pedal? These are all fun things you can explore, and you'll have students that will push you to do those kind of things. So automatically you're going to want to do more creative thinking with a student who pushes you. So sometimes you have to ask yourself, do I know how to improvise? Like, what level or grade am I at an intermediate level of improv myself? Am I going to be able to pass that on to a student? Composing and arranging. Do I travel? Do I like to garden? Do I read books? Am I helping cultivate that sense of creativity in myself? Do I have experiences I can share? And do I know history? These are great fodder for your lessons. And I want to encourage you, the C is really about connecting and having a conversation. All right, the R is really about recognizing and embracing individual students' strengths and weaknesses and interests. We are reimagining traditional teaching materials to engage students, to think more creatively, kind of getting them out of their element, outside of their head a little bit. I really think music is inspiring, and so you have to be emotionally connected. If a student's invested in the song, you can tell. If someone's just playing notes, it can be rather boring, and just focusing on technique all the time can overwhelm a student. And a lot of times what happens is there's this great disconnect between the emotional attachment to music. So I love what the last presenter was talking about, cultivating and transferring what the title and thought is into the music. So I have found starting with that emotional involvement and level of intelligence will help you have a better creative teaching method, and you can log in right at that spot in their mind and begin the journey in a very positive and effective direction that really becomes a lifelong process. So you just have to consider a few things and ask yourself, what kind of teacher you are, what kind of student you have, what kind of learning ability do they have. At your first orientation, you really want to get a lot of background on them, and you ask them to play something that they know how to play very well. Just have them play something that they know. If you're having a student that's a beginner, then this is not that conversation. This is for intermediate level. So maybe someone's transferring out of a different studio or moved or needs some new direction. So you ask them, what did you like about that piece? What specifically? And you just keep targeting that and peeling back the layers to find out and explore that, as long as it takes for them to identify what it is that they like or don't like. This is very important when you're trying to match somebody up to the right song. So what kind of style do they learn best from? Are they visual learners? Are they oral? Are they hands-on? You have to develop your lesson plan around that. And I think another really important question to ask them is what kind of student that they think they are. This is especially helpful because they're gonna learn to grade themselves, basically. And they're going to grade our lesson. And student surveys are super powerful. I teach at a university level where we have like a rubric system, and you have to submit grades, and you have all these syllabus and ideas that you have to have checked off. There's a lot of boxes we have to check off as teachers. So you really want to know about their interests, their family. Do they have a pet? It doesn't matter how old they are either. I know a child's aspirations are much different than maybe a mature adult. It has goals that are completely different. So, but it doesn't matter, because humans are humans, and each one has a personality, and they all have a unique story. And if you can size them up, you can usually match them better to their repertoire and level, and know their energy level, because you can pace the lesson according to that. So are they willing to listen, or will they resist when you take them new places? Because creativity has to have a very special place in your mind. You have to access. Type A personalities are not necessarily going to like this idea. A lot of times they, they need the credit and the affirmation words of praise. And you need to ask, can they relinquish the need for accolades? Like, do they need a point system? Do they need to be graded? So my question for you is really trying to figure out what level intermediate means to you. So if anyone could write in the chat bar, I would like to know how you gauge your sense of awareness of your students. I just kind of want to find out, because I'm always looking to get information and collect it from other teachers. How do you measure them without formal testing, or do you use formal testing to figure out what intermediate actually means? There's a great value in balancing the tension between knowing your worth and what different people can bring to the table. And the best way to figure that out is to do ensemble. If you have a studio that you can do group, you'll know right away what level people are willing to do. Matching players up, great. Putting the wrong players together can be really detrimental, like a young hotshot next to a mature student that is going to run out of the door. So being a teacher with a trained eye to see beyond that moment is a skill that comes with experience. But what I really think is important is the communication skills between the student and the teacher. Technique, reading notes, can they read both clefs? You're dealing with different rhythms. Can they use two hands? And most importantly, for me, and the subject today is about, do they have an imagination? Do they have any critical thinking skills? This is difficult. Or are they dumbed down by AI yet? I mean, it's a serious threat, people. AI is all over, and it's easy to cheat. And what is the incentive of working hard at something? These are things that we're going to find out as we're teaching younger generations. So this is why I like to think about theme and variations. I don't know how many of you use theme and variations, but sometimes that term right there invokes a scary feeling for most people. Like right off the bat, they're conjuring up a serious classical composition, like Handel's Passacaglia, or this terrible one my first teacher used to make me play, the ground in F with variations. I'm sorry, I will never teach that at any cost because I just dreaded that. But I love to introduce students to ideas. It's basically like opening up your musical wardrobe and you're letting them try on some ideas. And a theme and variation is really great because in its basic definition, a variation is the formal technique where material is repeated in an altered form. So you can change melody and rhythm and harmony and counterpoint and timbre and orchestration and all these wonderful things in any combination. And it allows a student to work on their characterization and choreography and stage presence and what kind of artists they are, because after all, that's what we do as teachers. We inspire, and we really want to give a path for them to take this journey. So you can introduce them to a few things. I have some ideas here I would like to run through briefly. I don't need to play them necessarily. I just want to show you what I like to do in my studio to help cultivate this interest. And if you can play them for your student, great. If you can't, you know what kind of teacher you are. You can flex your muscle, or you can just show them the music on the stand and play a YouTube video or listen to it on iTunes or Spotify or whatever your brand is. And then really have them give you critical feedback immediately. I think that's really important to open up the conversation. And what do you like or don't like? Do you like the way that they're playing it? Do you like their volume? Do you like what they're wearing? Do you like the way the song goes? Let's talk about the music. Did you like that ending? Wow, how about that tempo? Can you see yourself doing that? These are great ideas for them to start thinking for themselves. Listen, I started music as a child, and by the time I got to college, I didn't know how I knew what I knew because I was just always told what to do. And so I think it's nice to have a variety. And, back in the day, you just did what your teacher told, like the music was there. We had catalogs, like I had to read through the catalog and hope maybe I could play something from Disney. We didn't have always all this accessibility. And nowadays, the sky's the limit. Like anyone who can does write music and puts it out there. So it's very accessible now. And one routine that I found really helpful in my studio is creating a theme of the month. Okay, a topic that can be multifaceted, gives an opportunity to hunt down songs for each person. And I love this idea of autumn time music because it does sync up with the season, and it's really helpful to be in the season of what you're learning. Lots of time you're building off the same song for everybody in the studio. I found this to be a great teaching technique, just because not everybody plays the same song all year long, but it's just an opportunity to talk about one idea as you're building their independent lesson plan. And it keeps it fun and fresh to hear everyone's different approaches, and interpretations, their reactions. Some people will have a visceral reaction to it, and that's okay. Who knows? Music is different for different people, but it just might develop into a piece that you can all play at the end of the semester together. And this is where you would, talk about theme and variations, because not everybody's at the same level. So ultimately you do need to craft and arrange music to fit different levels. So one example I have that I think works really well is the Bemis lead sheet books. These are great. Angie Bemis has taken hymns and folk songs, and they're usually all in the key of C or all in the key of E flat. You should be probably familiar with them by now if you're a teacher. I love these. I don't usually start off with this because it kind of teaches students to not read music. If you have a person struggling with music, you have to do those concepts and teach them how to read. And that's where I think flashcards really help and all those other things. But this is for somebody who's 2-note bound and needs to learn to just focus on left-hand positions. And she takes the canon in every book series she has. She takes the canon in D, but it's in the key of C or whatever the book is in. And she goes through the 10 left-hand patterns with the accompaniment. And so once we learn through all of the chords, we learn the patterns, the single note, the blocked fifths, the broken fifths, the 1-5-8, the rolled 1-5-8, the 1-5-10, 1-5-8-9, 10. Once they get that concept, they're really learning how to play by ear and watching the notes, learning their boundaries, where the beginning and the end of the song, and they start connecting. And the C word in creativity also has to do with connection. Okay, so sticking with this concept, I'll have a student think about what is another variation that you come up with. And one of my favorite examples is a girl named Marissa who came back the next week. She was really pumped up about this exercise, and she decided she was going to do the whole canon right hand melody per each chord. So as so she went through the whole canon doing that, and I thought, well, that's a cool little right hand ostinato that she developed, but she was memorizing and it just came very natural for her. And it really built her self-confidence, and she had a song like in her back pocket at all times. And who doesn't want to learn the canon? It's like the all-time money maker. Okay, so that I love. Also with the canon, there's another idea I have for the canon that fits. If you have a student who wants to do Christmas time, the first Noel sits really well on top of that. So you're thinking about the tune, you get them thinking about where in the scale does the beginning of the first Noel start. On the 3rd degree of the scale. And then you can add the chords to the canon, to the first Noel. I don't have enough time to play through all of these things because I have a lot of ideas. But, you know, if you have the canon baseline progression memorized, you can add Maroon 5's Memories if they want to do a fun contemporary. If they have a sister who plays violin, I'll invite them into the lesson. And of course, you know, you're trying to get the girls, sisters to work together sometime, maybe play a wedding. So, you know, maybe you'll have the harp student really just learn the chords and how to accompany and not really play too much melody. These are all fun little techniques that I have worked with kids, worked with adults, worked with mothers and children, worked with, you know, outside, you know, working with other people is a really one way to bring in more creativity, because you have people that are collaborating and they accidentally find things, and this is so much fun. You know, also, like, the one thing I really love to do is talk about time, temperance, and tempo. All right, I'm not going to get through probably all of the acronym of creativity, but one of them is you know, teaching students to compose their own ideas. So, you know, let's maybe with a canon pretend it's the Flower Girls coming in on a variation. You know, really sweet and light. And how can you make it really sweet? And how about when it's the bride's entrance? You know, it's like you can really work on coloring up a moment. And how about the end? Can you learn to fade? Can you fade out? So you're really talking about touch and all these things, and they're like, you know, it's like deceptively delicious. You know, you're fortifying some development of dynamics and hand positions and technique and building an ear and coloring and exploring where they are as an artist and switching it up. You know, switch things around a lot. I think having them make connections between what they prefer and what they like doing and what you're telling them to do is finding that happy place. You know, and how to read off of each other. That's a really important concept. So you have some people that are underdeveloped in their imagination, and you have some that are very developed. So if you know, one of the worst ways to practice is to keep practicing it the same way it's written and get very note bound. You have people who need to have those notes stripped away from them and learn to reground them, where you start with nothing and help them identify at an intermediate level. Like, these are intermediate thoughts, I think. I don't think this is good for a beginner all the time. But, you know, to get into the advanced level, you know, we're stuck at this intermediate for quite a long time. Like, a lot of my students will always be intermediate. They just are happy that way. I teach probably more lever than pedal. And we get to a place where, you know, everyone has a different story or a different objective and have a different calling. We're all called to the harp. So you're going to find music that really connects with the player and, you know, try to decrease performance anxiety along the way. Because if you make it more about the music, it'll be less about the performer, and you'll help get them out of their element and not so stuck in their head. The key is like really unlocking natural music makers. So another cool song I like to use is from the harp exercises, right? Deborah Frio's Agility and Speed. There's a theme and variations in the back, which is all about the A minor descending scale. And if you can maybe talk about that as one of your subjects for the month. This is just in addition to the regular repertoire. It's a great warm-up. And at an intermediate level, I would say you're going through this entire book. There's nothing super advanced in that particular etude book. But it is going to push them a little bit. And the changes meter. It showcases all the different concepts that you learned during the book. And you can call them by name. You can identify a personality. So if you really know the background of the student, you're going to say, this is you know, your little basset hound looking at you, and now I want you to play it like they're watching you and you're matching their emotion. You know, so it's sort of like ripping out the meter and ripping out some of the logic and getting more into the emotional part of your brain, which is very difficult for people to separate when you're thinking about all these commands. So that theme is also a good ensemble idea. So at the end of the semester, if you're looking for a group get along kind of thing, one person can start. You can make it into a round. The second person can join at the beginning, and you can keep going around that theme and variations if you avoid some of the meter changes and stick to 3/4 time. That's, I think, a fun project that worked. Let's see. The etude is the other thing in that book that I would recommend, playing 3 different ways. If you get into the middle of this book, it's page 23 and 24. It's just a little etude, and it's just 3-finger arpeggios broken. Some are going ascending, some descending. Okay, but the trick of this really is not just learning the chords and the technique, but I like to play it 3 different ways. Play it as written. She has accents in every second beat, so it sounds like a 1, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3, which is absolutely not the way I would recommend playing it out, but it's great for strengthening your fingers. The second way I would play it is in 6/8. So you're trying to find a 1E, 2E, which is normally how we would do 3 + 3 in our hands. A 1E, 2E, 1E, 2E. So you're getting them to think about 3/4 time, 6/8 time, and the third way is playing it all in 1 beat time, and accent the very first note. So you're gonna have to step up maybe some of the tempo. So there's a lot of different things you can do with the stuff that you already own that you've probably worked with. I like using fun show-off pieces. I have some of those hot shots that want to play something really great. This is on the Wisconsin State Solo Ensemble competition list as a Class A. The beautiful thing is you can play it on pedal or lever. And Deborah Hansen-Koenig put it in 3 forms. You can do the beginner, you can do intermediate, and you can do an advanced concert version. But this is really fun and engaging because you have one little concept that is from a French, the Jacques Rousseau minuet, this tune. That's like in the very first harp book. If you all learned great harp, old tunes for new harpists, something like that, that's the first book I've learned. That was in that book. So sweet, of a sweet melody, and you can work on this. I'm back in time in the Baroque period, so you're talking about history and what you would be wearing and what you would be eating and where you would be playing your harp and what kind of harp you would be playing on. It's just a wonderful way to get creative during the lesson and spark some interest in what we're actually trying to inspire as teachers. And then you've got this like crazy flamenco, and every flamenco variation is different. So you have this, you have a quick meter change and feeling of where the beat changes to that 1E, 2E, 3E. And it's about articulation, being punctual, being rhythmic, but color. All of a sudden we went from ice, the sweet, like brittle, like, I want you to think of like icicles in winter, and then fiery hot. And a lot of times it's olé, and it's fun. You get to do the dance. I remember one of my students, Sophie, she would always go, every time I play the harp, I pull it back and I feel as though I'm dancing with the harp. And this is the way she would always enter into her space. And it was really sweet. I always think of her when I pull the harp back. And you have to learn how to compose yourself, how to center yourself. And adapting all these teaching methods to suit each student's learning style is really important. Mindfulness and relaxation techniques. This all can do with color. I love the idea of color. Color is my thing. So it's basically like trying on clothes. What color looks good on you? What color do you vibrate with? Which is the one that matches you, your skin tone, your idea, your artistry. The simplest way, most people like to talk about color with painting and nature and clothes, but it's hard to do that with music. So I'm always on this journey to try to blend this idea. the easiest way is to go to the paint shop, go to Home Depot or Menards or whatever, and grab some paint chips. I mean, just hearing like Palace Purple, Fading Sunset, Purple Surf, Sparkling Spring, instant titles. I love to think about how does that color match and relate to what you're playing or what you're wearing. Like obviously Baroque flamenco is like an orange, it's spicy. It's got that flavor to it. You've got to have that heat. And this is how we secretly get them working on a lot of the development of the technique that can be rather tedious after a while. Teaching students how to compose their own music on the harp, teaching effective practice strategies that nurture creativity. Some other great composers that do these variations, Frank Waltz does this on When the Saints Go Marching In. That's a really great piece. He does a lot of fun sound effects, and that's an ensemble piece, by the way. If you don't know that one, look it up. There's progressive study books like the Harp Olympics. It's like one size doesn't fit all. I can't stay on one method book for one person the whole year. I try, but I've never been successful at it. There's just too many things going on. So if you like graded things, the ABRSM graded scales is good for people who need levels. But I want to encourage you as teachers to really go beyond thinking about how you can do creative assignments. I like to sketch out rough drafts. I like them to think about the music as a horizon and what the landscape looks like. Find the access point of their imagination level and start right there. And I think you can help jump in the mindset of a person and help teach them more effectively at whatever level, but especially at this intermediate stage, because developing variations is what we always do. It's really horrible to keep playing the same song the same way every single time. I don't recommend it. I might be very different in my approach to teaching, but it's something very special every time you enter into a space. Different environment, different people. Unless you're breaking down a song for an orchestra repertoire, you have a series concert or a recital, or you're learning the ensemble, and you have to be, present and right where you're supposed to be. But when they don't have those priorities in the lesson time, you have a real open window to work on some of these and calibrate that. Practice air harp, use flashcards if they're visual learners. I love these little flashcards. They're from Alfred's publishing company. I also teach piano, and I find this very helpful in both situations. If they're having a hard time learning notes, the answers are on the back. But I love that they have intervals in here. If you're trying to get someone to look at intervals a little bit more, you can see them melodically and harmonically. Get them to, cover their eyes, or I like using scarves. Scarves are really great, covering up your arms. I just have so many ideas, and I'd like to write them all down and share them, but it's really a blessing to be a blessing. And if you can decrease the performance anxiety in your students and kind of go in with this approach, I think you will have a fun time with your semester and be creative as a teacher and find that the joy in playing returns. So let's see. I don't know if I'm probably out of time because I'm losing track. Have we got any ideas on how do teachers guide grading systems? I see. And that says, I don't use grading systems. I decide for each student individual what they might need or want. I do mix them at different levels in ensembles, yes, so they can learn from each other. That's really important, listening to one another without that sense of competition and creating camaraderie. So I found my themes of the month really are my themes and variations of life. I have a whole list I'd love to send with Mary about my monthly themes. So maybe it'll help inspire you to think of that theme of the month and consider, who they identify as artists. And that theme and variation, I swear, it can help explore those different characters. And you learn your niche. You don't necessarily have to learn all these hard repertoire ideas to become a good harpist. You're building musical, musicianships. And, I'm classically trained. I'm probably going to teach more classical. If you're a folk harpist, you're probably going to teach what you know. But I've embraced who I am, and I embrace who they are, and I help build them. And it's hard to stack levels next to each other, but you're probably going to be in that intermediate level for quite a while. And I love to help create set lists. So you do a lot of research work, and sometimes your students do it with you or for you, and you build upon that conversation. And it's a wonderful time to be a harp teacher right now. So let's see. I don't know if I have anybody with questions, but I do have more creative tricks. And wondering if anyone else has some tricks they like to use.
That would make a really good workshop, tricks. maybe we should have a webinar on tricks.
I think
this is great. Thanks so much, Tammy. I think you've got some wonderful ideas, and we'll look at your handout. I would like to go into this further. I'm not sure how. So.
Yeah, this is like part 1.
oh, that's part 1. Yeah. Well, I would like to go into this further at some point in the future. It's really an interesting topic. Now you got my mind going with all kinds of ideas. But yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both very, very much. Does anyone have, any questions? You want to pipe up there, take yourself off mute and ask a question? We're here. I think we're all hot.
I think so too.
Really? I mean, it's now 101 here, and yeah, we all need some falling leaves and some rain to just rejuvenate ourselves, I think. But Tammy, I think you've rejuvenated us with all these great ideas, and Kimberly, yeah, those ideas were great. Thank you both so very, very much. And really, I would assume that you guys are open if someone has a question later on, that they'll be able to ask you a question, and I'll put that in the follow-up. Is that okay with you guys, both of you?
Yes, I would love that.
Okay.
It's great to keep fresh topics, and the more that we can have this conversation together, we can help each other build better studios and relationships. And honestly, I don't know if anyone's willing to admit their weaknesses, but this is an essential part. If you know somebody that knows something better than you, send them for a coaching lesson. I am totally a fan of doing that. Some of us are so worried about losing students because we really rely on the income, but there's just so much information out there available, and there are some people that are just more cultivated at something and have honed in on a certain subject. And so it's nice to invite them into your studio. That was one thing I forgot to say in my theme of the month studio sessions. During the pandemic, I developed this once a month conversation for an hour, sometimes an hour and a half. It was one part seminar, one part entertainment, one part kids could showcase their music. But I hire other harpists to join, and it was a great business model, a way to support other artists and harp teachers while keeping the fires lit during a hard time. And I think it built hope. It kept people active and overcoming virtual fears and all these things. I devoted an enormous amount of energy into each one of those studio sessions. So like I said, I'd like to try to keep those presentations kind of pure, and then help other teachers also do that and support one another. So yeah, it's great connections, and I'm really happy to see so many teachers out there. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's real good that so many teachers are here. Thank you all for attending, for being interested in being better teachers and getting new ideas and absorbing new ideas. Thank you so much. I think we've got this recorded. I'll go ahead and make sure I do a follow-up tonight, like 1 a.m. And thank you all very, very much for being here. And we'll see you at the next one, okay?
Mary.
Thank you again, Tammy and Kimberly. Bye now.
Justin. Are you gonna keep this site up for just a little bit so I can go in and download some of the stuff that they put up?
I'm down. I will send that to you.
Oh, you will? Okay, great.
I'm going to send it to you tonight. Yeah, I got it all.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Bye now.